What's up, y'all? It's Jasmine.
And what's up, y'all? It's De'Viar.
And you are now tuned into Stories of the Streets.
As always, Stories of the Streets is sponsored by Change Waco, the New Black Collective, Blackson, and of course, Rogue Media.
And today we have Miss Jaja. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jaja Chen. I am a local social worker and Boba tea co-owner of Cha Community, formerly called Waco Cha. I've been in the Waco area for over 10 years now. Originally began in Waco, studying as a student at Baylor University, and continued on in grad school for the Masters of Social Work.
Ooh,
that's cool. Where did you said you've been in Waco for 10 years?
Yeah, so I came back in 2011.
Okay. Are you from here originally, or are you from somewhere else?
Yeah, so my hometown is Norman, Oklahoma. Oh. And so that's where I was born and raised up until age 13. And so at 13, our whole family moved overseas to China. And so I spent both middle school and high school between China and Taiwan. So my family is all extended family, along with my parents, are now in Taiwan. So they've been there their whole lives. They actually came to America to study in OU, the University of Oklahoma, and that's where I was from originally. And that's part of what led them to be in Waco, or not Waco. Oh my gosh, I have something in my eye. Sorry, guys.
You're fine.
Oh my. It's like my contact lens. Whew.
I hate that. I wear contacts too.
No, it's like stuck. Okay, sorry, y'all.
You're fine.
He'll be able to cut it and chop it and stuff.
Okay.
You're fine, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but basically, they went and studied in Norman, Oklahoma, and then that's what led us to originally be born there and raised there, and then eventually moved back overseas for work purposes.
So was it like a culture shock when you came back?
I think so. I think the hardest part was the fact that, most of my experiences in Norman was being the only Asian American, right, in school. And then being in China was the first time I was able to be, in a majority culture kind of context, in the sense of really getting in touch with my ethnic roots, my background, even being able to celebrate things like Lunar New Year, which is actually coming up, with my extended family, which was not an experience I ever had in Oklahoma, right, where most of the experiences was just, Thanksgiving, Christmas, just the U.S. related holidays. So being in China and Taiwan, I always tell folks it was where I really found my roots and where I started to realize, wow, okay, this is what it means to be Taiwanese American. And then transitioning to Waco was a huge culture shock because, once again, it was like kind of thrown back into a context and a culture here in Waco where, once again, I'm one of a few Asians in most, locations, environments, and just really now trying to grapple with what it means to be Asian American as an adult, which was very different than when I was a kid, right? And so I definitely would say the first couple of years transitioning back to America, there was just a lot of confusion, right, with, which identity do I want to relate more to? And so honestly, I tell folks I kind of distanced myself from Asian American identity and just mostly spent time with international students or other immigrants because I resonated a lot more with their experience. But, eventually post-school, into young adulthood, really got to a more kind of confident place within myself, in my identity, racially and ethnically.
How did you end up at Baylor?
So part of it was friends I knew had gone to Baylor. Another part was they just gave a lot of scholarships. And so it really did come down to the school that would give the most scholarships.
Right.
And it was just funny because Baylor actually gave more scholarships than my parents' alma mater, which is OU. And so I ended up coming here as a result of being able to get a lot of scholarships.
That's always the case for a lot of minority, we're like school with the most money that's giving us the most money that we can go to with the least debt.
Yeah, because, my parents weren't able to financially help contribute. And so then it really did come down to that.
Yeah, me too. Still got student loans, but I mean, it was always like, what school is gonna give me the most money, and like how's the minority representation, and like what do all of these things look like for me. And I went to North Texas, so we had a lot of international students as well.
Yeah.
And I was culture shocked, because I was just like, whoa, it's diversity here. Like, versus coming from Waco, where it's kind of white and black. And so I was like, and I was only like 2 hours away from home, and so I can only imagine how you feel. I was just like, okay, this is different, and this is new, but I learned a lot about a lot of different people. I think I met a girl from the Philippines. Like, it was really just crazy, because getting into different friend groups and just experiencing different things, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, we were eating Asian dishes, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but it tastes good to me. So just those different experiences, like you said, like finding who you resonated more with, even if you didn't exactly identify with that, that particular group of people, you still had some similarities or something in finding yourself amongst that.
Yeah, there's a term for it. It's called third culture kid. And it's this idea that you grew up in a different culture outside of what your passport is, and then eventually kind of took different portions of each culture to merge into a third culture.
Right.
So then a lot of third culture kids would say they don't really resonate with either culture, but then have to kind of fuse elements of both.
Yeah.
Do you miss Taiwan and like China?
Yeah, I think the pandemic really brought up a lot of the bittersweet feelings or the longings of wanting to visit again, because I haven't been able to go back since December of 2019, which was right before the pandemic hit. And so at this point, it's like I have no idea when it'll be, because of the fact that there's travel quarantines and things like that. And so that really just makes it harder to visit. And so I think one of the other harder elements is the fact that all of my extended family and immediate family is in Taiwan, between Taiwan and China. And so, and same for my husband. My husband, Devin, is from China as an immigrant. And so his family is also all in China. And so everybody outside of my brothers that are here in the U.S. Is overseas. And so even just seeing their holiday pictures and just all the things that they're doing, I mean, there's multiple new family members, that I haven't even been able to meet, that my cousins, little kids, and there's like 2 or 3 that I'm like, oh man, I haven't been able to even meet them yet. And so definitely has been hard.
The pandemic definitely has been hard on everybody in so many different ways. We were talking about that a little earlier. You said you're still a social worker, right?
Yes.
What is that like with the like COVID restrictions going on and stuff like that? Has it really affected kind of your work and stuff like that? Or?
At this point, it's a bit better than it was initially. So when the pandemic first started, went exclusively from an in-person practice, right, with in-person therapy to 100% telehealth overnight, essentially, right? And so that was a huge shift for myself, and I know for many other social workers and therapists. Thankfully, I had done telehealth before, but the hardest part was just not having as much of the connection.
That's
and
what
just
I was gonna
missing the nuances, right, of
yeah.
being in person and just being able to have nonverbal communication. I think that is so huge. And I found for myself that being on telehealth 24/7, like back to back, really led to a lot of burnout because of, just feeling like, okay, this all day, you're just on technology and having to put so much concentration and focus and attention, to serving the clients and the work that you're doing that requires like really high mental energy on top of the telehealth kind of platform just created, I feel like a very kind of disconnected experience.
Yeah. And that probably doesn't really help. A lot of people, I think, kind of the whole reason that they kind of get therapy and stuff like that is the really intimate, experience of being able to talk to somebody about different things. Like that, you said you have your own practice, right?
Yes.
So that's what it's like. You're a therapist. You help people, like you listen to people talk about their issues and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I feel like that really might. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it could be a barrier, but something really interesting that emerged from the pandemic that I had never thought would become a new area in my work was being able to then, broaden work to the entire state of Texas, and then now working with clients, especially Asian American clients that are wanting to work through racial trauma and the impact of anti-Asian hate that occurred throughout the pandemic. So a lot of Asian Americans started pursuing therapy in the last couple of years. Like, I don't have the exact statistic, but I've read online in articles that it's the highest level that there's ever been for folks who are really just wanting to heal from trauma and childhood experiences. And similar to my background, right, where they're second generation immigrants, or, where they've come from immigrant parents, but now are wanting to work through their trauma. And so that's been really exciting for me, just being able to serve folks in my own community in that new format. And that wasn't something I had entered into social work or private practice planning to specialize in that area. So
I bet it's really inspiring to people who are also like kind of younger than you a little bit, that they hear that somebody in their family is seeing like an Asian therapist. Like I'm pretty sure there's people that are like, oh, I want to do something like that, and then they see you doing it, and now they kind of feel a little bit more inspired to do it. So that whole part of the pandemic was insane to me. Like when people were just being so rude to like they're being really hateful to Asian people, and then you had like stuff going on in China where there's like different like black people that were like different viral videos and stuff of them getting like, it was a really weird point in time. Like, why are we being so rude and evil to each other when we're all going through the same exact thing? Like, we're all experiencing the pandemic. So why, I don't know. I think that's good to hear. I don't want to say that's good to hear. You don't want to hear that people are going to therapy, but
I do.
I'm excited about, granted, I'm biased because I'm a therapist, right? But I think I've found it to be such an act of courage, right, for so many individuals, and not just folks in the Asian American community, but just seeing folks, people of color, BIPOC folks. I know for many therapists, including myself, we've seen such a huge higher amounts of folks who are now like, okay, we want to work through, or we need to work through our racial trauma, and we need to work through trauma in general. And so then I see it as an act of courage for our communities, right? To really, want to, leave a legacy of healing for themselves and also for their kiddos and for their own kids and the families and partners and folks around them. So it always gets me excited when folks reach out.
I think that the telehealth kind of helped too people be courageous, because I don't have to walk into this building and people are seeing me walk into this building. Yes. Because I know a lot of people, like you said, before the pandemic, they would have never gone to therapy, but they have the option to be in the comfort of their home, and they don't have to sit face to face, or they don't have to walk in or drive somewhere and be seen. Because I really think that a lot of the shame that came with going to therapy is the fact that people are going to know I'm going to therapy. Where now they have the more privacy. Or the accessibility, right? Because that's what I meant, because a lot of folks might not have been able to find someone that has a similar culture to them or background to them, but now telehealth really opens up opportunities for folks to be able to find a therapist that looks like them or can understand their language or culture. Yeah, I think it's helped a lot, because I know I'm like, looking for a therapist. And I'm like, And like, everybody has these ideas of what they want their therapist. Like you said, somebody that looks like me, that kind of knows what I'm experiencing and can understand what I've gone through. I feel like that's important when you're going to therapy, because if you go to therapy and nobody, the person doesn't understand your background, it is kind of hard. Because I've been to like grief therapy when I was younger, and it was awful. And I cried, and I was like, I'm not ever coming back here. And my mom was like, okay, you don't have to come, because it was that bad for me, because it was an older white guy, and I was like a 10-year-old little black girl, and he's telling me, well, this is what you need to do to get over your grandfather's death. Wow. And I'm like,
how are you telling me that? Yeah, like, how are you the one to tell me
50 or 60 years old telling me to do something that I don't have the life experience to do, and I don't have the coping skills to do. So it's like, I think having the opportunity to look for people by, sex, age, and race, it definitely helps, because I know they have that one. I don't know if y'all have anything similar, but they have this one website called Therapy for Black Girls, and it's just a whole lot of black women who are therapists. And that's a great tool, because most black women do want to talk to other black women who they feel won't judge them. And so, like you said, going through their, you know, their racial injustices or whatever they're going through with you, that's very helpful to people because you get it.
Yeah, and I think the hugest thing, right, is where then you don't have to spend, you know, your time in therapy educating the therapist about your culture or even having to like move in that space, right? That it can, and that's part of why it's so huge to have that inclusion and to find, you know, representative and inclusive therapists.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's cool. I don't know. I'm excited. I didn't know if you were still practicing or not, but that's exciting because it's like I know a lot of people, especially like with everything that just happened last year, they need that. And I didn't know you could do all of Texas either. So I'm like, that's even better for you. Like, you know, you're getting to talk to all of these people, reach all these people and help them. And it's something that you love doing. So I'm just like, you know, whenever we have the opportunity to help people in the capacity that we love to do so, I really think that that's a blessing in itself.
I think, I had a question. I forgot. Oh, no. We were talking earlier about therapists, stuff like that, and how like therapists usually have a therapist to talk to somebody, you know, about. Does the therapist, do you have a therapist, or do you have somebody you're supposed to talk to about just like everything that you listen to and take in from like your guests, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, well, I have gone through therapy on and off, and I was in therapy for the last 2 years, and we just concluded about a few months ago because I got to a lot better place. But yeah, I highly recommend for therapists to experience therapy, and I'd always be concerned if a therapist haven't gone through their own experience themselves to be on the other side. And another platform or places, you know, consultation, then that's where you work with other therapists to help support you in the therapy work that you're doing.
Okay. That makes sense. Because I think I'm still interested. When I first got out of high school and stuff like that, I had said originally I wanted to get my psychology degree and have my own practice and stuff like that. I don't know where it really came from, you know, the need to like want to help people and like, you know, want to be a therapist, stuff like that. But yeah, when we were talking about trying to find guests and Jasmine mentioned you and was telling me stuff about you, I was like, yeah, I want to have her on. Like I want to kind of pick her brain a little bit just because it's a really trying to think of the word, like kind of daunting like task to be someone's therapist, but it's also, I feel like, really fulfilling and really like a blessing to have like that set up in our world, because a lot of times when you're going through stuff, all you really need is someone to talk to, you know, like you don't necessarily want I'm not going to say answers or like, you know, you don't really want someone to tell you what to do. You just kind of want someone to listen to you and help you,
like Jasmine
everything.
Was mentioning, right, for your experience as a kid, it's like, you know, with grief, it sounds like that therapist was not really seeking to hold space, right, for you to be able to process, to just verbalize your feelings or just to even like identify what your feelings were. And so that's oftentimes the role of a therapist, right, to really just hold space or to help clients to be able to make room for their experiences, as opposed to trying to just fix or problem solve, where sometimes there might be some problem solving, but really kind of balancing between the.
That's cool. So that makes a lot of sense. That may be an aspect a lot of people don't think about, because therapy and like like having a therapist, stuff like that, I feel like got really painted in a negative light at some point in our society. I don't know when, but at some point everybody's assumed that if you're going to get help or if you're going to talk to somebody that you're crazy and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of people got put off on therapy. So it's kind of nice hearing that there's like a resurgence that people are really trying to, you know, find help and get people to talk to and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think I've thought about that a lot. And I think part of why folks can have that stigma is, you know, when you really medicalize therapy in the sense of seeing it as like, oh, everybody must have a mental health disorder in order to go to therapy, which isn't always the case. Yeah. Sometimes it is the case, right? And that's huge. But then to also see that like, oh, okay, we don't need to, this is a quote from Dr. Helen Harris from the School of Social Work, we don't need to pathologize grief, right? We need to normalize grief, and we don't need to pathologize it and see it as like, oh, that's a disease, when really grief is a normal response. Trauma is our normal nervous system response to horrific and stressful experiences. Burnout, right? It is a nervous system response. And so then when we pathologize those things, it can create that stigma of like, oh, only crazy people goes to therapy, when really therapy can be that place to work through experiences of trauma and grief, which doesn't always mean somebody has a diagnosis per se, but could definitely be something that impacts their life and can really, impact their work, their social relationships, or just their day-to-day well-being. So
right. And I don't think that I thought about that until insurance came into play. And it's like on insurance, it's listed as behavioral health. It's not listed as mental health. It's listed as behavioral health instead of mental health on your insurance. And even when I was talking to my therapist a few years ago, she was telling me, in order for you to even get to the stage of where you do need a clinical diagnosis, you have to be, not for lack of better words, crazy and like regular therapy. Like there has to be a recommendation, because I didn't know that there was a process either. Like how you're saying, like you don't have to have a diagnosis to go to therapy. She was explaining to me, like even for you to get to that stage of needing extra assistance and things like that, like y'all have to say, okay, well, therapy is not working for them. What's the next level to help this person? And when she explained it that way, she was like, don't let people make you think that you're crazy because you're talking through the things that you've gone through, like you said.
Yes.
Because that's a natural response. Like we hurt when we go through things, and there's nothing wrong with that. And everybody doesn't know how to process. And so one of the things that she worked on me with was learning how to use different techniques to process my grief. And she told me, like, there are some things that you have to put on the shelf and you get them back down when you're ready to deal with them. Doesn't mean that you forget them, but you put them in a box in your mind and you keep them there until you're ready to face them. And you don't have to take them all out at the same time. And that's something that kind of helped me, because I was like, kind of makes sense. Sounds like records. Like, you're keeping a record of your life. And she was like, one thing at a time. And I think a lot of people would benefit, like I said, from going to therapy, just because it's really, like you said, it's problem solving, but it's also you having your feelings validated, even if they might not be all the way right sometimes. Yeah. So I'm like, we're humans and we get emotional. Sometimes we don't always have the right perception of something. But even if that's the case, in therapy, whatever you feel is validated in the beginning. And then you're told, well, this is how you could handle this, and this is what the reality is. And so I think that it's like you said, the people having the courage to go to work through those kinds of things, because it is hard in the beginning. I cried the first 2 sessions.
For sure.
The whole time. I think I was there for like an hour. In the first 2 sessions, I just cried because I told her, I was like, I didn't realize that these things were bothering me so much. And a lot of people don't, because we're taught as minority children, you have to be strong. You have to do this, because if you don't get good grades, you don't do this, and you don't carry yourself this way, and you don't act this way, people are going to look at you like you're less than, and you have to be smart, and you have to, it's hard.
That shows up a lot in the Asian American community too, because, with a lot of immigrants kids, there's that pressure to succeed, or to feel like, okay, well, I just got to tough it out, or not have emotions, or not display emotions, because, my parents sacrificed to get me to where I am today. And so then if people are struggling or going through grief or trauma or any mental health concerns, it can feel like, okay, have I, shamed my parents' work and their upbringing, and a lot of feelings of shame, right? With acknowledging where they're at.
Yeah. And I don't think that I realized that was something that was coming for all minority kids until I went to college. Yeah. Because I was just like, so your mom said, well, yeah. I was like, this is kind of crazy. But then I realized, like, they don't do it to harm us. They do it because they feel like we don't have a chance if we're not that way. And which is really sad. A lot of them are like, I'm trying to, I'm teaching you to be strong because being strong is what's best for you. And it's like, our generation is like, no, that don't work for us.
Yeah, well, it's even just this idea of recognizing, and that's what I meant by, so many of my, especially minority clients are so courageous, because them taking the step of therapy is usually the first person, in their whole line to ever take that step. And it's them recognizing, oh, okay, even though my parents did say those things of like, okay, we just got to tough it out or not show emotion, them realizing, okay, that's my parents operating out of trauma, out of survival, right? And realizing, okay, they were just doing the best they knew, but acknowledging, okay, this is not what I want to continue in my own family or in my own culture moving forward, or seeing like, okay, that's no longer serving us, or that is actually working against us, or is actually causing challenges like within relationships or within life, or the perspective of what it means, to be Asian American, or what it means to be a person of color, right?
Right.
And so yeah, it takes so much courage to enter into the work of processing through trauma and pain, but it also can be huge, when it comes to the ripple effects.
Yeah, because I know, like, for me, like, and like I said, it's so crazy because I didn't even know that we all had so much in common as far as our upbringings. Like I said, UNC was diverse. So there was like a lot of a big Asian community, a lot of African exchange students. And so just even within that, like the difference between being Black and being African, like realizing that, I'm like, but they're all still on the same thing. Like, go to school, you need to get a degree because you need to be successful, and this is the only way. Like, I had no idea that they all had that thought process. Either that, or you don't need to go to therapy, you need to pray or depend on your religion to carry you through. And it's like, that's not enough. And they make us feel bad when we say God is not enough. But I always tell people, like, you can pray to God, but you also have to do the work. And just because I pray doesn't mean that I'm not responsible for the way that I heal myself. And that's something that was hard for me to learn, because we're always told, just go pray, or, whatever religion our families practice, that's been like the standard for our family, depend on that, because that's what's going to save you. And I'm like, still drowning.
Depend on it, the Bible literally, if we're going to talk about Christian faith, the Bible literally says faith without work is dead, like something to that effect. So it's so if you're not doing the actual physical work here while you're alive, trying to, improve yourself, then whatever your faith is in is not really going to work. And that's probably one of my favorite things about our little generation. Like, I don't know the terms. I don't know, like, I get confused with millennials and Generation Z and all that kind of stuff. But like, I'm 23, so the people a little bit older than me, and then the people a little bit younger than me. Yeah, our little age area. I like us. Like, I think we really have the potential. Well, not everybody, but I think a lot of us have the potential to like really just fix things. Because I do like this whole kind of understanding that it's like, hey, our parents did the best they could with what they have and what they knew, and it's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't just do everything that, our parents tell us. Like, it's okay to go ahead and branch out and do our own thing and kind of learn our own experiences and kind of just make our own path. Dang it, I was finna bring another tweet and I forgot what it was. It was something about just like, I don't remember what it was. It was about parents and stuff, though. Just parents being wrong and just not being wrong, but just kind of like, this is like kind of like joke like that. Like, oh, somebody, like had sex in the 90s or the 80s, and now I'm here and I got to pay bills and I got to, live, and I got to deal with all this stuff now. Like, I'm just here. I'm alive. So it's like, if I'm gonna be here, if I'm gonna be alive, I got to deal with, X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to deal with it the way that I seem fit. I think it's best for me. I think that's a really bold thing of our people.
I think that we have more accountability for ourselves, because I say all the time, like, our parents come from a generation, especially African American parents, where we're coming out of our great grandparents being, some of them being slaves, and our grandparents, being the children of sharecroppers and things like that, and their family, their parents are trying to do better for them, and they don't really have it. And then you get to our grandparents' generation, our kids are not going to suffer. If we're going to spoil them, we're going to do whatever we want to do from it. And our parents, their whole generation is kind of spoiled to me, because I find the common theme among all of them is like, we all struggle with the same things. Talking to my friends, I'm like, dang, like, I thought it was, not to bash our parents or anything, but it's like, it's kind of crazy that we're all like experiencing the same sort of lack, to say the least, and unlearning all of these bad behaviors, because our parents did the best they can, because they didn't really know how to be what we needed. And so there's a phase of unlearning. I feel like it's for about 30. I don't know about. I wouldn't go younger than 20. I'm not gonna give them that much credit.
Yeah.
But for like maybe like a 20-year span between 20 and 40, you have this group of adults that are saying, I'm gonna go to therapy. I'm gonna be accountable for myself, and mama, I'm grateful for you. Daddy, I'm grateful for you, but what you told me, that doesn't really work, and it kind of sucked. And it's like, not to be disrespectful, but it's like, that's very, first of all, that is a hard realization to come to. Like, I tell my friends all the time, like, that is a hard reality to come to. Like, they did the best that they could with what they had, but it still wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
or it wasn't what you needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like that. Yeah, I mean, thank you for trying, and I love you, and I don't fault you for not knowing better.
No.
But now I'm starting my own family. Yeah. I have to know better for my kids, and I have to know better for myself, because it's like, I feel like we play catch up a lot. Yeah. And I don't like that. Like, I don't. But I'm really proud of us, because we're the ones who are starting the businesses. We're the ones who are going to therapy. We're the ones who are changing what family structure looks like. Whereas they were toxic. Like, I'm just saying, they really were. Like, they had a lot of issues.
A lot of them. If you even go further back than our parents, people are talking about how, like, you got grandparents and great grandparents that stayed in marriages that weren't good. They weren't faithful, like, good.
And they had another family down the street. Yeah, and it's just like those types of things, and they knew about it, and they stayed. A lot of women that I've talked to that are my grandmother's generation, they married just so they could leave the house, and I'm like, no, I got my own house. Like, just things like that. Like, and I know for them, it's like, wow, like, I would have never dreamt that for myself at 20 something. I'm like, I'm not getting married to leave no house. I'm just gonna go apply for the apartment or whatever by myself, And so it's like, just that much of a switch within that short amount of time is like, it shows a lot. And I'm just like, I'm proud of us. They can call us crazy, but I'm just like, we're doing a lot of stuff on our own that it took y'all 20, 30 years to achieve.
Yeah. And I think that's, where you then realize, oh, okay, it's like the level of what unprocessed and unhealed trauma does generation to generation. Because, within a lot of Asian American experiences, it's, parents, grandparents who came out of wars, came to America because of being refugees, or, with my grandparents experiencing both of the wars, right? And so it's, or even, I always think about, the Japanese Americans and the impact, right, of the internment camps during World War II. And so the level of trauma that's unhealed, and then just, pushing through just to survive and just, keep on going, right, out of survival. And so then here we are in our generation in a place now where it's like, okay, we've been shaped by that from grandparents, parents, and now experiencing, right, pandemic, which is a collective trauma, racial uprisings, further trauma, right? And I think that's what really led to such a collective shift within so many people even this last couple of years, where folks are like, okay, we're like done like with all this trauma and racism and systemic injustices, and then realizing, okay, we can't continue living like this, and need to make changes, within ourselves, within organizations, within systems. And so that's been huge, for me to be able to see. And that also goes with the idea of courage that we see within so many people within our generation, who are seeking to make those shifts.
Yeah, I think we were just like, nah, this is not cool.
No,
thank you.
I'm not finna spend my next 10, 20, 30 years dealing with all this stuff.
And I think that they dealt with a lot of stuff because they didn't have any other choice.
Yeah.
And we have more access to more resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, it's like, we don't have to do this. Like, and y'all didn't have to do it, to be honest. Like, and I think if they had the same resources that we had back then, then it'd be different.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, I think it would be different.
We'd have flying cars and stuff right now. Like, we'd be so together as a country, and just probably the world all together if we just, I don't know, got to jump on some stuff.
It would be different. And when you were talking about the different Asian communities, I worked for communities in schools in Louisville, and one of our largest populations were Chin kids from Burma, and they were refugee children, and like the stories that they told me, how they got here, and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
And it was mind blowing. Like, we had one kid, he was like, yeah, I don't remember what happened, but they had to basically escape, and they were like hopping trains, and he was like, yeah, that's how we got here. He was like, we ran away from the camp, and I was like, what do you mean? And he started telling us the story, and I was like, wow, like, these things are still happening.
For sure, yeah.
And I never, that's why I was telling De'Viar, like, when all of this stuff started happening with the pandemic and even the, you know, the police killings, I never imagined hearing or seeing these things in our lifetime. And it's like somebody just slapped the book on the table and it fell back to something that had happened before. And so, like, speaking to those kids and, you know, trying to teach them English and different things like that, it was very, I don't know, like, I missed them. Like, they're probably in high school, but I missed them because it was so sad. Like, they didn't even know how to use the restroom because they were used to using the bathroom over holes. And I'm like, you know, it made me sad because I genuinely did not realize that these types of things were still happening.
Yes.
And I was like, what do you mean a concentration camp? He was like, we escaped. And I was like, what?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the issues too, right? Because there's a misconception that Asian Americans, you know, you might have heard about model minority myths and all of that.
Yes.
There can be a misconception that Asian American only encompasses like East Asians, which is, you know, what I identify as a Taiwanese American. But there's statistics that show that disparities, like socioeconomically, is the highest disparities between Asian Americans, you know, from folks that are higher socioeconomic class versus lower, because there's such a huge range, and there's still a lot of folks, right, where their background is, you know, they came to America because of escaping from war-torn countries, or you know, they came as a refugee, or even you know, are coming undocumented. You know, there's a lot of stories that are not being told, right, about the fact that there's a huge undocumented population of folks, you know, from China and from other countries in Asia. And so then, yeah, it's this idea of like the untold stories and untold narratives of what it means to be Asian American. And, you know, more and more folks are even recognizing that, like, okay, South Asian is all encompassing. Like, Asian Americans are so broad. There's so many countries and languages and cultures. So it's a very huge term, and that encompasses so many different peoples.
And it's not the same.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I was like, what is Burma? And I asked them, I was like, never heard of that. I was like, what is Burma? And I was like, what is Chin? And they would teach me Chin. And I was like, okay. And it was just, I don't know, because there were so many of them. And I was like, all y'all were displaced. And they were babies. Like, I worked at an elementary. So the little boy that was telling us the story, he was only in fourth grade. And I was just like, and he was so, like I said, us having to be strong and mature. He was so mature for his age. And I'm just like, this is not, you know, this is not okay. And they had people coming in working with them, but it was just like, it's heartbreaking, you know, because like you said, we know Asians in America as a model minority. But I had never, ever imagined that was going on in Asia until I met those kids. And it just totally changed my perspective on everything, because I'm like, these are babies. And like, their parents were poor, very poor. They would be at work long hours, and, you know, we have the after school program. They would have to walk home, and the oldest sibling would be responsible for them. And it's just like, people don't, like you said, they don't see that, because they're so used to seeing like Tokyo and, you know, things like that. And
the
so
same kind of story
it's like,
over and over.
Yeah, and we don't, like, I didn't know what Burma was. I was just like, what are you talking about? And he was like, Burma. He was like, it's my country. It's where I'm from. And I was like, where's that at? And he couldn't really explain where it was because they couldn't go to school. So it's like, you know, they spent their life running. And I'm like, that's so sad. And he's telling me, like, we didn't have shoes, and yeah, we were running barefoot. And I was just like, you know, but people don't see those things. And so, like, when I say, like, I think everybody should go to therapy. I do. And especially, like, making therapy accessible for children like that. Because they were so sweet, but I really felt bad for them because it's like, you know, yeah, that's a lot. And you're what, 9, 10. That's a lot to have experienced at that age. And I'm just like, but how did y'all get, like, I'm just in my head, but how did y'all get here? How did y'all get to Louisville, Texas? You know, like in my head, like, how did y'all even get here? And it was so sad because he had 2 younger siblings and his younger sister was in kinder. And I'm just like, what? Like, how did y'all run with a baby? Because I think that they had only been here like a year or 2. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like mortified. Literally, I'm just like, this is not okay. Somebody go help or something, you know. And you, like you said, you don't know people's trauma or their grief until they tell you. And for those kids, a lot of us were their therapists because they would just talk to us. And I would be like, well, now, you know, you have a better opportunity and you have access to more things. And look, you have clothes on. And so just those small things, it's like, I can't imagine what you hear because I was just, you know, with them for maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And that was for, I think our grant was for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't imagine the stories that you've heard from people, but it's like people need to understand like things are really happening to people. And that's why it's important for like our generations to be like, it's okay if you go get help for that. If you go talk to somebody about that. For sure. I'm just like, traumatized from even just even thinking about it.
Have you aside from social work, what are the other things that you kind of like participate in?
Yeah, so I am one of the co-owners of our Boba tea company, which is headquartered here in Waco. It's called Cha Community. Used to be called Waco Cha, and we rebranded last fall. And so that business emerged right through our experiences here in Waco, especially when it came to just that kind of like what we're talking about, right? This theme of, you know, the untold stories or that feeling of, you know, not being able to see our culture or, you know, representation of Asian Americans within Central Texas in particular. Granted, you know, I always understand and acknowledge that, you know, there's only about 2% Asian Americans or Asians here in Central Texas is the last census data. But, you know, even though it's 2%, I always tell folks that doesn't mean that our stories and our culture doesn't matter, right? Exactly. Like even if we're just 2% of the population, you know, our 2% matters still. And so that's really what drew us, Devin and I, to start what we call Waco Cha at that time, because we would always, you know, go to bigger cities like Houston or Dallas, where there's a larger Asian American population, and just hope like, okay, maybe one day, you know, there'll be these restaurants or boba tea shops that would open, you know, here in Waco. But then instead of just hoping for more representation, we realized, okay, we can't just keep hoping for that to happen. Like we actually need to be part of the change that we want to see in our city here. And so we started a pop-up at the farmers market downtown here in Waco, summer of 2018, after we had spent 1.5 years dreaming of a concept for boba tea. And boba is from Taiwan, which is where my family is from. And so that's a drink that was really common and popular and something I just drank, you know, from really young and learned how to make in the kitchen with my mom, just stirring the pot. And so it was something that we already were familiar with. And then we're like, okay, we really want to use boba as a way to bridge cultures and to create community, which is our mission, right? To bridge cultures and to create community, and this idea of creating a sense of belonging for diverse cultures in Waco, and for folks to be able to celebrate their culture as well. And so, you know, I think starting 3 years ago into where we're at now, it's been quite a journey, and you know, a lot of folks have been like, wow, how do you feel about how much y'all have grown? I look back, I'm like, we had like no idea what we were doing back in summer of 2018. And I don't think we've had ever envisioned for the business to grow to where it's at now. And so it's been really exciting to see, and also I think for me as a social worker, also something that has been, a place to even see, okay, how can there be innovation within a boba tea company, right? To be able to make a collective impact or more of a community impact as well.
Oh, that's a really cool idea.
It's good too.
Yeah. Yeah. You got some? I haven't had some. So I need to get some. You said it's community cha now?
Or cha community.
Cha community.
Yes.
Okay. Because
I try to get different drinks every time.
And see, everybody, when I first heard about Waco Cha, people told me it was black owned. So that's how I got like. People told me it was black because I remember.
Really?
Yes. That's how I got. That's how I found out Waco Cha was. Like people were telling me, or maybe people said it was locally owned. Maybe that's what it was.
I'm like, I have never heard that.
Yeah, we were at work. I kind of helped take the lead on doing something for Juneteenth at my job. And one of the things that we did was kind of like try to get together a list of different places that are, black owned for people to like, go and visit. And someone like during our little meeting was like, oh, that's Waco Cha. Like, like putting out Waco Cha. Like, you never heard of that? Like, are you sure? Like, Waco Cha's I don't think we actually.
Well, I see that as a compliment. I guess I'll receive it. Not, we're Asian, 100% Asian American owned, right? Yeah. So I'm a Taiwanese American. My husband's a Chinese immigrant. But I think maybe the perception is because we've really sought, and I think this does come from, both of our backgrounds being really relationally driven, and also as a social worker, me having really wanted from the very beginning, right, to do a lot of connection work with nonprofits and with organizations. Like we've been members of both the Centex Hispanic and African American chambers since the beginning of our business. And so having a lot of that connection and desire to bridge with other communities of color has been a huge part of my role and work, and what brings me joy and energy, and what I work, and even things like connecting with Jasmine, right, has been part of the work I do at Cha Community. And so I see it as a compliment in the sense of like, okay, we've really sought to bridge cultures with folks of different backgrounds, even from our own, because we really believe in this idea of abundance, in the sense of, as we grow, we can use, what we have to also be able to help others to uplift, right, as a community, as opposed to the idea that like, oh, okay, we have to be like isolated or competitive, but the idea like we grow together. And so that is something that has been really huge for us.
Oh, that's a beautiful mission too, because a lot of people, I don't know, kind of do certain things with the intention of, oh, I'm doing it for myself and I'm just going to help myself out, and I really want to make it, something special. So I really like that. Now I'm going to definitely stop by one day and come try it. They have
dumplings too.
Okay. I'm not a big tea person, but I'm going to try it because it's you.
But the thing is, it doesn't taste like tea.
Okay.
Like, you can get different types of tea. And it's, I think I had the Milky Way and then the Galaxy Lemonade. Those are the two that I always get. And you choose your sweetness, so it's like, you don't have to feel guilty.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and that's part of what, outside of the community work, that's the other side, like the idea of creating fusion drinks and also premium options. Because many boba shops have more, kind of powder-based, artificial colorings, those types of ingredients. And then we've really sought to create more handcrafted in-house ingredients with loose leaf tea, freshly brewed. And that's what has been kind of the second fold kind of area, outside of the work that we seek to do when it comes to creating community.
Yeah, that's why I say you don't have to feel guilty, because like you can still tell that it's natural stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's good. And then like the Milky Way, kind of like you would like it if you like this. Seriously.
And I just started getting into coffee this year. like this month. Like,
it doesn't quite taste like a coffee, but it has the
same kind of quality or the idea behind it or whatever.
It reminds me of a very, very good frappe.
Okay. That's just too. Yeah.
So it's like, they're like, if I'm feeling, if I need coffee, because I've really been trying not to just be on a caffeine binge.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's what I would get if I don't want to feel guilty. And it's like, I should get bigger sizes because they are really good. And it's like, I don't know if you ever had Boba, but it's really good. I found out what Boba was in college and I was like hooked. And so when I found out about Waco Cha, I was like, oh yeah. Because I hadn't seen a boba shop in so long. I think I went to the mall once and I tried to get something, but it, like you said, artificial. You could tell it wasn't, authentic. And I was just like, this is not what I had in college, and I didn't want it. So I was excited. And like I said, just like she was saying, like the community partnerships and stuff, like I know outside of, connecting with us, you've worked with Footprints Dance Company and different organizations and helping even with the Juneteenth pageant.
And that was so fun. I miss being able to have gatherings like that.
So it's like those are the things that, like she said, bridging the gap in the community, which is something that she and I had always talked about from our first conversation, like how can we all work together to make sure that like we're all on the same page. But that is funny that somebody said it was black owned. I'm like, what would a black owned company call themselves? Cha?
Yeah.
And
for the listeners who don't know, Cha, it stands for tea in Chinese, and is a way for us to also bridge cultures within our own logo and a brand itself.
But that's cool. I just go get some tea.
Yeah.
I don't even know what else to say. I'm just like, go get some tea, and they have cute merchandise as well. I got like some little loose leaf tea balls that I use, and then y'all have like shirts and different things. Y'all still have like the shirts, and I know that y'all have some people like I forgot her name, but she makes like the cute little clay earrings and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's a cute accents, Boba earrings. Yeah, and we're hoping to do more of that throughout the year, especially when it comes to like collaborations with artisans and local vendors to be able to feature their items or to do collaborations like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, really so it's idea. Cool. It's cool, and then I like the space. It's cute. I like anything that's cute, y'all. It's cute in here.
Y'all are on social media and stuff like this too, right?
Yeah. It's at Cha_community on Instagram or at Cha Community 1 on Facebook.
Okay, got you. Yeah, definitely check it out.
Have y'all expanded outside of Waco?
Well, that's something that's coming up. So by the time the listeners are listening to this episode, we should probably be a few weeks into opening in Temple. So we've been working on Temple for the last year almost. And so, there's been delays because of the pandemic. But we're planning to open in downtown Temple by mid-February of this year. So we're really excited. It's getting really close to being finished out with the build out.
That's exciting.
Cool. Yeah. Congrats on that.
Yes, I'm excited for y'all because I'm just like, it's a successful business.
Yeah.
Because everybody doesn't do it right, but I'm like, that's really good. And then y'all have the opportunity to reach a different community as well because, Temple is a different playground.
Yeah.
As far as like, even the differences between, the black community in Waco and the black community in Temple. And I feel like that's something that they need to be exposed to as well. And I know people in Temple, so I'll be like, yeah, they got a tea shop down there too.
Yeah.
Free promo.
There you go, slide by. Yeah.
Free promo. And it's good. But I'm definitely excited for y'all.
Yeah.
And also like just the way that y'all have given like the profit shares and working with different organizations. I think that that's something that's admirable because you have so many businesses that are like, nope. I know anytime we call you, like, I have an idea. Can we, the back to school drive, can we put our box there and collect stuff? And even, you giving us other people to work with, like Lalo's Coffee and stuff. Because I don't think a lot of people knew, but we had no idea.
I know. I literally heard Lalo's for the first time yesterday.
Yeah, we had no idea who Lalo was or, who we were going to work with. And I asked you for recommendations, and a lot of the reason that we were able to give those kids those backpacks and stuff for like filled this year not this year. I forgot it's a new year.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Last year. Yes, last year was because, you made those connections for us. So thank you for that. And also, thank you just for always being able to have suggestions and being available for, questions because we always all have questions and sometimes we don't have the resources. But I think that it's, cool that if no matter how long it's been, if we reach out to each other, it's always, like, yeah, I can help you. And I think that's part of bridging the gap that people need to understand is like it doesn't always have to be constant communication because we are all busy.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's a hard pill to swallow nowadays because people feel like they have such instant access to people with social media and stuff like that. It's like I don't have to answer every phone call. Yeah, like we're not always.
I don't even talk to my friends all the time, so I'm just like I feel better knowing that even if I don't talk to y'all all the time, it's like, you know, whenever I do talk to y'all, it's never any. Well, you need something. You haven't talked to me, so I'm like, I'm pregnant. I'm really tired.
Well, isn't that what it means, right? To be in community, right?
Right.
So when I say community, I don't even mean like family, right? But recognizing that like, oh, okay, even if we're not in constant conversation or contact like we are with our family, but yet we can also still create a sense of connection, belonging, support mutually. Right. And so I think, you know, that's something that we've really needed as a society in the last couple of years with the pandemic, creating a lot of isolation and preventing opportunities for community connections. But it's something that also I think is so special too about the Waco community, the fact that we are small enough to where you can be able to make a lot of those connections, but also where, you know, I think especially with small business and the nonprofit world, there's a lot of, you know, just even interdependence and like the mutual kind of uplifting and desire to better the community as a whole when it comes to Waco locally.
And it's not a competition. And I think that's the best part of it is like, somebody asked me for this. I don't have it. Do you want or somebody gave this opportunity. I can't do it. Can you do it? And I think that a lot of people don't have that. So it's been refreshing to say the least to be able to work with everybody. And I think that I appreciate it the most because we're all still fairly young. And it's like, okay, maybe we're getting it right. That's how it feels like. Maybe we're getting it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yet on time.
Oh,
okay,
we're out of time.
No, you got anything else? You just want to, you know, put out there?
Give them your address to the shop.
All right, yeah. So you can find us at Shaw Community, downtown Waco, 1001 Franklin Avenue, and we're going to be in downtown Temple pretty soon. The easiest way to get in touch with us would be on our Instagram page, but you can also find us on our website at shawcommunity.com.
Gotcha. Cool. Got anything else?
No.
All right, cool. As always, I'm De'Viar.
And I am Jasmine.
And thank you again, Ms. Jaja, for coming on and talking with us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.